begin, if we could find our places. This morning, Madeline Wood argued that animals go to heaven. This afternoon, Josh is going to argue that we should send them there. Took me a long time to come up with that. I'm very proud of it. Thank you. Thank you. Seriously, though, Josh is a fantastic example of what I tell students at the beginning of every school year as we're coming into senior thesis. If you can find the topic that really interests you, that you want to learn about, that will keep you engaged all year, it actually makes the process very enjoyable. It's still work and there's still stress involved, but it can actually be a very enjoyable process. And when Josh first told me about this idea, I knew that he had found the thing that could keep his interest all year long and could keep him enjoying the process. And I think it's fair to say that you've enjoyed the process as much as it can be enjoyed, So I'm really pleased for him to get to make this argument to you today. His panel consists of his advisor, Mr. Martin Phillips, who's a member of our humanities department. His third reader is Mrs. Laura Jagman, who is one of our CCS board members, and as part of her professional and personal life has traveled numerous times to Africa, so she's well suited for this. His second reader was / is Mr. Craig Morris, member of our math department. However, Mr. Morris had to leave yesterday afternoon for a heart procedure that his mother is having done in Missouri. She had it done earlier today. She is doing well, but he needed to be with her for that. So I'm going to sub in as the second reader, and I'm going to use some of Mr. Morris's questions and some of my own. But I'm pleased for Josh to get to come up here and make his argument for you. Let's pray, and then Josh, you can take the stage. Gracious Heavenly Father, I thank you for the good gifts that you have placed in Josh, and I thank you for the interest that he has had in this argument, the seriousness with which he has taken it, and the diligence that he has shown in crafting this argument and getting ready to present it to us today. I ask that your grace would be with him to give him clarity of mind and peace in his heart. In the name of Christ we pray. Amen.
There you go. Trophy hunting in Sub-Saharan Africa is a topic that comes under great controversy due to the ethical and moral associations that come with it. This can be seen as recently as 2014 at the Dallas Safari Show. The Dallas Safari Show is a show where hunters from around the world come to buy hunts and sell guns and basically do everything related to hunting. At this particular show, an endangered black rhino hunt was being auctioned off, with all the proceeds going to conservation for the species. The hunt was bidded on by hunter Corey Knowlton, who paid $350,000 to go on the black rhino hunt. The animal being auctioned off was an old and aggressive black rhino that was going to die soon and was even harming other rhinos in the herd. Once the media found out about Knowlton's winning of the auction, he was brutally condemned. He received death threats and even had to pull his own kids out of school for their safety. This leaves many people to wonder what trophy hunting is and if it is beneficial to conservation. I'm here to argue that trophy hunting is both beneficial to the conservation of species in Sub-Saharan Africa and is vital to the survival of the local economies in the smaller communities throughout Sub-Saharan Africa. However, before I get into my argument, there are a few terms that will need to be defined. The first one of these terms is trophy hunting. Trophy hunting refers to the hunting of animals that are typically bigger and more dangerous than your average white-tailed deer. In Africa specifically, it can be trophy animals are divided into two categories: plains game and dangerous game. Plains game consists of antelope and other smaller animals that are not very dangerous, while dangerous game consists of animals like what are in the Big Five. The Big Five in Africa refers to the most expensive and most dangerous animals that can be hunted there. It consists of the rhinoceros, elephant, lion, leopard, and Cape buffalo. It is many hunters' dream to go on a hunt for one of these animals. Another term that will need to be defined is the term conservation. Conservation in this thesis will refer to the preservation of species. Sub-Saharan Africa will refer to the geographical area of Africa that lies south of the Sahara Desert. However, the term trophy hunting can be confusing because it sounds like trophy hunting is all about taking the trophy of an animal. However, it is not just about this and consists of hunters that enjoy to hunt and enjoy the pursuit of the chase. It is also referred to as big game hunting and is synonymous with that term. Another term that will need to be defined is quota. Quota refers to the system in Africa where animals are looked over by conservationists and scientists in order to make an accurate number that can be taken every year by hunters. The term economics will refer to the production and transfer of wealth over a certain area. This can either be local economics or the overall economics of a country. And finally, the term poaching will refer to the illegal killing and hunting of animals in Africa. Trophy hunting is beneficial to the conservation of species in Sub-Saharan Africa, primarily due to the economic incentive it creates. It is conducted in 23 Sub-Saharan African countries, generating around $200 million a year. And out of the $68 million generated in South Africa, 28 million, around 41%, came from the Big Five alone. The examples of how trophy hunting can benefit conservation can be seen through how it allows the reintroduction of endangered species onto private ranches. This can be seen in South Africa, where the legalization of white rhino hunting has resulted in the reintroduction of the species of private land. This has led to a population increase from less than 100 animals to now over 11,000. This can also be seen with the elephant population there, as it recovered from a low point of 120 animals in 1920 to now more than 12,000. This was due to the creation of private and protected game reserves as a result of trophy hunting. Trophy hunting has also promoted the recovery of the bontebok, Cape Mountain zebra, and black wildebeest in South Africa. In Zimbabwe, wildlife has increased by around 50% due to trophy hunting. However, what most people don't understand is the important role that trophy hunting plays in African villages. Many Westerners don't realize that these people have to live with wild animals in their backyards. They have to deal with an elephant destroying their entire field and year's wages, and lions even eating their own kids. This, even though these locals respect and care for the wildlife, leaves them no choice but to kill these animals, as they can be pests to them. However, when trophy hunting is implemented, it allows for the locals to see the economic incentive and have reason to keep these animals alive and not hunt them, as they can benefit economically from them. The results of trophy hunting have also allowed it to be a key stimulant behind the shift from game ranching from cattle ranching on private land in South Africa. Because of trophy hunting, cattle ranches that destroyed animal habitats to be made in for cattle ranches are now being converted back because the same and more amount of money can be made from them. This has resulted in around 5,000 game ranches and 4,000 mixed livestock game ranches, incorporating a population of more than 1.7 million animals, allowing these animal habitats to grow. Countries like Mozambique and Zambia have also allocated large blocks of land for wildlife reservations. This includes the Quota hunting blocks in Mozambique, which are areas of land that were created to be reserves for hunting and to allow wildlife to thrive. Trophy hunting proves to be such a great conservational tool due to its self-sustainability. Trophy hunting is self-sustainable because it is self-regulating. Ranchers decide on, and with help from the government, decide on their quotas, giving them an economic incentive to keep animal herds strong to ensure better marketability for future seasons. This allows trophies to be kept higher, which results in more money for these ranchers, giving them all the more reason to maintain stable herds. Trophy hunting is also vital to the survival of many villages throughout Sub-Saharan Africa. And one of these ways is through the meat it provides locals. When an animal is killed in Africa, The meat typically goes to locals and their villages because many Westerners don't want this meat, as it can contain parasites that we're not used to and can be not tasty to us. This allows locals to take meat from these hunts instead of them going out and hunting themselves through the bushmeat trade. The bushmeat trade is when hunters from local villages go out and kill animals unregulated, resulting in population decline simply for their meat. However, when trophy hunting is used, it allows for the regulation of these animals to be killed, with the meat providing the villages with what they would normally get, along with the animal that was killed providing money to go towards more conservation. Trophy hunting is also vital to these local economies because of the jobs it creates. Trophy hunting creates jobs like game trackers, skinners, guides, and taxidermists. These jobs are all taken by locals and are used to help further stimulate the economy. Another interesting fact is that when an animal is killed in Africa, none of it goes to waste. Locals take every single part of the animal, including its bones, and turn it into where they can sell jewelry or souvenirs and anything that they can create out of it. This leads to a further larger economy, allowing them to stimulate trade. Trophy hunting is necessary in these economies where tourism is not viable. This can be seen in South Africa and Tanzania, where there are still not enough tourists that visit. Even though since these are popular countries, there are still not enough tourists visiting to generate enough money to pay for the conservation areas here. In Botswana, 74% of all wildlife real estate revolves around trophy hunting. This is because Botswana is not a very popular destination with tourists. The reason these areas are not very popular with tourists is because many of them are politically corrupt and dangerous places. At the same time, they are in the wild and not always the most beautiful parts of Africa. However, this is something hunters are not primarily concerned with, as they are there to hunt and enjoy being in the wild. This allows trophy hunting to play a bigger role in ecotourism and generating more money. People have suggested the idea of photography tourism to replace trophy hunting. However, this idea is not efficient, as a plains game hunt in Africa costs around $10,000, while a photography safari only costs a few $100s. And that is just plains game, which is the cheapest kind of animals that can be hunted in Africa. This just shows just how important trophy hunting is to these economies where they're in remote areas and cannot generate enough money through normal tourism. Since the conservational and economic benefits of trophy hunting have been demonstrated, it is worth taking a look at the countries in Sub-Saharan Africa where trophy hunting has become illegal. Trophy hunting was banned in Kenya in 1997, and it has resulted in a loss of about 60% of all wildlife since the ban. A more recent example can be seen in Botswana, which banned the practice in 2014, but recently lifted the ban in 2018. The Botswana government cited wildlife decline as their reasoning. However, the decision was made based on a study by animal rights group Elephant Without Borders. This study showed a quick loss in wildlife, showing 11 species to have declined by 61% over a short period of time. This study was flawed because it looked at a short period of time, showing a quick drop in wildlife and not examining the overall and long-term effects, which would show trophy hunting to have made a bigger impact. They also did not consider the effects this ban would have on the community-based natural resource management program. This was a program that sought to achieve the goal of the social exchange theory by creating community-based approaches. This was based on the premise that if local people participated in wildlife management and economically benefited from this participation, then a win-win scenario would occur. This follows the idea of the social exchange theory, an idea in which two parties implement a cost-benefit analysis to determine the risks and benefits of an exchange. This allows both parties to benefit from the exchange and creates an economic incentive. Along with this, the loss of this program came an income loss of about $7 million and around 200 jobs lost in the Okanvako Delta alone. This is a popular area for hunting, where a river comes into a delta and creates very lush habitat, allowing there to be good game and for it to be a popular area with trophy hunters. This job drop shows just how quickly trophy hunting can affect this area. The ban affected wildlife conservation as well, leading to an increase of poaching from 309 incidents in 2012 to 323 in 2014. Rural livelihoods were also affected by the ban, as safari hunting in Botswana accounts for 2/3 of all income generated by local communities here. At the same time, the ban resulted in negative attitudes toward wildlife conservation by locals. This can be seen through the perspective of local villager Jimmy Bachelet Natima. He says that before, when there was hunting, we wanted to protect those animals because we knew we earned something from them. Now, we don't benefit at all from the animals. The elephants and buffaloes leave after destroying our plowing fields during the day. Then at night, the lions come into our kraals. He's talking about how lions come into kraals, which is the term that refers to a group of African huts. This shows just how close these people live with this wildlife. This negative attitude toward conservation can be very detrimental, as locals are some of the primary causes in conservation for wildlife. Trophy hunting in Sub-Saharan Africa is a topic that comes under great controversy. This can be seen as recent as 2015, in which a lion by the name of Cecil was killed by a hunter from Minnesota. Cecil the lion was part of an Oxford research project and had a tracker in him. He was living in a certain area where they tracked his movement and wandered out of his normal range. Whenever he did this, at a nearby wildlife conservatory, hunter Walter Palmer was on a lion hunt. Cecil wandered into the area where Palmer was hunting and was mistakenly shot by Palmer, thinking that he was just another lion. When the media got a hold of this, it went worldwide and spread international condemnation towards Walter and his family. He received death threats as well and had to fear for his family. This idea of hatred towards trophy hunting stems from the argument that trophy hunting is bad because it involves taking the life of an animal. For example, PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, states on their website that one of the main motivations of trophy hunters seems to be displaying body parts from their victims in a gruesome exhibit of self-glorification, and that trophy hunters kill endangered species for fun and cause suffering to animals. This is just not true. Hunters hunt because they enjoy hunting and enjoy the fair chase of tracking down an animal in the bushes of Africa. It has nothing to do with bloodthirstiness, as PETA would want you to believe. The conservational benefits of trophy hunting have even been pointed out to animal groups, rights groups like PETA, like the World Wildlife Fund. In 2009, the World Wildlife Fund, an animal rights group, came out in support of limited black rhino hunting in Namibia. This showed that even these kind of animal rights groups, although they changed their opinion because of condemnation, but this admins shows that even they can see the conservational benefits, but still take issue with the killing of an animal. The World Wildlife Fund was even founded by trophy hunters and has since then taken a different turn. This argument with trophy hunting takes issue with the taking of the life of an animal. However, this argument and this problem can be resolved with the Christian worldview. This can be seen in the book of Genesis, in which God tells Noah that every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. And as I gave you the green plants, I give you everything. And let us make man in our image after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps in the earth. This piece of scripture not only supports hunting in Africa and the world, but encourages it. This is because in this passage, God is giving Noah dominion over creation and explaining that it is his responsibility and humanity's responsibility to care for wildlife. And because trophy hunting is beneficial to conservation and wildlife, it can be said that the Bible supports trophy hunting, as this is showing that we are taking care of God's creation. In conclusion, trophy hunting is both beneficial to the local economies and rural livelihoods throughout Sub-Saharan Africa, and is vital to the conservation of many endangered species throughout the area through the economic incentive it creates. Thank you.
Well done, Josh. We're going to move into the panel questions, and we'll start with Mr. Phillips.
Thank you, Josh. I've really appreciated getting to work with you. And so we're very close to being done. Just a few more minutes for you. You began and ended your presentation appealing to death threats that hunters have received. And I just am curious why in the world anyone would want to subject themselves or their children to such treatment.
Yeah, I think that these hunters, I mean, they didn't know that they were going to receive death threats for killing an animal. And I mean, I've looked at these guys and they still hunt. I mean, they don't really care because it's something they enjoy, and they themselves know it's beneficial to conservation. And yeah, I mean, they had no clue that they would be receiving these kind of death threats when they went hunting.
Josh, question from Mr. Morris. It's multi-part, but fairly straightforward. What is poaching and why is it illegal? Is it an economic issue, an ethical issue, or both?
Poaching in Africa or anywhere is the illegal hunting of animals. This is very detrimental to species in Africa specifically because of the amount of endangered species that live there. So when a poacher goes out and kills an animal to make money, it is very dangerous because it doesn't take into account the local wildlife herd populations and is simply taking the life of an animal without making sure it is beneficial to conservation. So I would say that it can be seen as an ethical issue and an economic issue, as whenever these animals are killed, that could be an animal that could be killed by a trophy hunter, resulting in less money towards conservation and hurting the local economies.
Great, thank you.
Hi, Josh. I enjoyed reading your paper and I applaud you for all the work that you've done to bring you to this point. In your paper, you define conservation and state that trophy hunting is one of various methods to preserve an animal species. What are some other methods to conserve an animal species? And are any of these methods currently being used in Sub-Saharan Africa? So to sum up, what are the other options for conservation apart from trophy hunting? And why is trophy hunting a better option?
So most of the conservation schemes in Africa, in Sub-Saharan Africa, are actually the result of trophy hunting. So for example, trophy hunting creates money that pays for anti-poaching efforts, where literally guys go out with guns to protect these animals as they have an economic value. At the same time, trophy hunting creates money and resources to create game reserves and create protection for these species. So in a sense, many of the other ways in which conservation can be done are all the result of trophy hunting and the money coming from it.
Do you ever envision a situation in which a ban on hunting would be advisable? Say an extreme drought when animal populations are under stress, would it ever be a good idea to stop hunting entirely?
I would say, as we saw with Botswana, that an overall hunting ban can be very detrimental to wildlife. This is because without any trophy hunting, all the money that would go to conservation of these species is lost, resulting in there not being anti-poaching efforts and reserves, which causes the killing of more animals. In the case of there being a drought or something of the sort, I would be agreeing that there should be a limit on the amount of animals of a particular species that was harmed to be killed. So this can be done through the quota system, which is primarily why it exists, is to create this regulation to keep stable herds and allow hunting at the same time.
All right, Josh. My next question from Mr. Morris. Are these trophy hunting auctions that you referred to in your paper held in other countries like Japan, England, Spain, etc.? Are they specifically targeting the wealthy also? So what does the global market for this service look like? And is the demographic always wealthy, or are there people in lower socioeconomic groups that can participate in this?
Yeah, okay. So the main place where auctions actually take place is the Dallas Safari Show. I mean, there's people from all around the world that come to that show to buy hunts, and outfitters from around the world come there. And yes, there are there are Chinese people that hunt, Europeans that hunt all across the world. But I would really say that at the Dallas Safari Show, that is where a lot of people come together, and it's where the main auctions are held. From my research, I don't know of any other like auctions, but that's kind of what I say to that.
Are there, to kind of
Yeah, second part,
rephrase
what
the
was-
second part of his question, are there any hunts that are available to people who aren't fabulously wealthy?
Yeah, so hunting is trophy hunting is very expensive. I mean, I would say it's mainly for the wealthy, but there are some hunts that can be affordable. I would say that you can go on an affordable hunt to Africa if you really want to, if you do your research, which I've done because it's something I want to do. And you can plan it out to where the lowest cost for a basic plains game hunt would be $10,000, which with a well-paying job, you could probably save up for and be able to go on. But that's for antelope and gazelle and more basic animals, and then versus elephants and lions, which can go up to hundreds of thousands of dollars to hunt.
Okay, thank you.
So when you state that trophy hunting produces $200 million in the countries of Sub-Saharan Africa, did you consider the total gross domestic product, or GDP, of this region, or the GDP of the individual countries, to determine if that's really a significant number? Because according to the World Bank, the 2019 GDP of Sub-Saharan Africa was 1.76 trillion in current US dollars. The countries you mentioned have the following GDPs: Namibia, 12 billion, Botswana, 18 billion, Zimbabwe, 21 billion, Zambia, 23 billion, and South Africa, 351 billion. So 200 million comes to 0.01%. Is that really important in the economy of the Sub-Saharan region?
I would say that it may not be important to the overall countries, although it does play a role, but it's very important to the local and small villages and communities, as 200 million in those areas spread out over a certain area like South Africa plays a big role on the smaller communities. Now, there are other things to boost the GDP in those countries. South Africa is a well-off African country and has many other resources, but primarily for these local and smaller economies, trophy hunting plays a big role.
So animal rights groups were shown in a rather critical light in your paper, but I wonder, do animals have rights? And a way of recasting that question so that it's not a simple yes or no is, are animals owed anything by those hunting them?
Yeah, so for one, I feel like that could be a whole thesis on if animals have rights. But what I would say is they're part of God's creation. And according to the Bible, we have dominion over that creation. So I would say that we don't owe them anything, although we should be respectful and hunt fairly and manage the wildlife, because the Bible does not support wasteful hunting and does not support not taking care of his creation. So
Let me ask a follow-up to that, Josh. Do we owe the animal, as hunters, do we owe the animal the right to as clean and painless a death as possible?
I would say yes.
All right. Third question from Mr. Morris. Will you explain in more detail how regulated trophy hunting works toward animal preservation? Essentially, how does hunting and killing preserve the species?
Okay, so as I was talking about before, the prices for the hunting of these animals is very expensive. So whenever, for example, Knowlton paid $350,000 to go on a single hunt, which involved the taking of one animal, that money can be used for preservation to allow there to be guards and to allow there to be fencing for that certain area, and allows essentially one animal's life to be taken in order to like save an entire herd.
Josh, in your paper, you state that trophy hunting is self-regulating and that game ranchers make their off-takes based on quotas. I read your source document on Cecil the lion, which addresses something called quota swapping. You say that Walter Palmer, the dentist from Minnesota, had the legal permits and that the shooting of the lion was an accident. However, Palmer was a few hours drive away from Matitsi, where there were lions on quota. The owner and the guide were not incentivized to conserve, but instead they chose to cheat. How do you reconcile the practice of quota swapping, which is cited as common in the industry, with the claim that trophy hunting is a self-regulating activity?
I would say that in every system, there will always be people that try and cheat the system. And I have personally heard stories, especially in South Africa, where canned hunts, which is basically where they release an animal a few weeks before, are sold on the regular. And many hunters are aware of this. And so I would recommend, for hunters to avoid these kinds of areas. And I trust that they would, because according to a study I read, I think it was 95% of hunters said they would not hunt the area in Africa if it did not benefit conservation.
Yeah, as a follow-up, would you consider Palmer's hunting of the lion a legal kill or illegal? Or would you say it's poaching, what he did?
Well, the area where he was hunting was an area, at least in his eyes, what he thought, according to the guides, and the guides may have cheated him in that sense. But I would say that goes into a whole legal argument about, in one sense, it was illegal because he killed a protected animal, but he had no idea the animal was protected, and it was a very big accident. And he didn't get arrested or anything because the government there saw that, and just a big misunderstanding, kind of accidents, which do happen. So that.
Good. You want more? Okay. I'm going to ask one follow-up to that then. When you're talking about international travel to Sub-Saharan Africa by an American hunter, if that hunter does knowingly break the law, what sort of legal consequences are there for him? Is it possible for him to be prosecuted, and how often does that happen?
Yeah. My research hasn't really covered international laws on that kind of thing, but specifically in Palmer's case, I know that he wasn't allowed to come back and hunt there.
Okay.
Yeah, but other than that, I don't know much about the laws across countries there.
Fair enough. All right, Josh, the panel portion is over. Now begins the audience portion. As Mr. Bertram has said, I'm super stingy, greedy, a self-centered man. So I hold on to the microphone at all times. We start with adults. You get one question, no follow-ups, unlike we panelists who just ask endless follow-ups, and me included. And then we move to students. All right.
Josh, well presented. Clearly you're pro hunting and I'm so very not. But my question is this, what what caused you to choose this very, very specific topic for your thesis?
Yeah, that's a good question. For one, I love hunting. And so that kind of went towards me wanting to do a thesis about hunting. But at the same time, I know a lot of people that hunt in Africa and that have been there. And I think that this topic is an important concept because I think a lot of people misunderstand it and don't realize the conservational benefits that trophy hunting can have.
All right, next up.
You mentioned a couple of different times where hunters face death threats for their hunting. Did you come across any sort of explanation in your research as to why people would kill or at least make threats to kill other people over the death of animals?
I think it's ridiculous. I don't really speak in their minds. I don't know what they're thinking, but I mean, I guess they just feel that killing an animal is worse than killing a person. But I mean, I'm not in their minds, so I don't really know what they think about that.
Next. Let's see, we got lots of students wanting to ask questions. Mr. Hoshauer, do you have your hand up a bit? Oh, wow. Y'all should feel special. Whose hands? Grace, Eli. All right.
Hey, Josh, good job. So you talked a lot about how there were economic and conservational benefits to trophy hunting, but you explained how the conservational benefits actually come from economic incentives, and these economic incentives are coming from outsiders. Typically, if they, I mean, you explained how the biggest auction for these things are held in Dallas. Typically, Westerners, I assume, are coming into these countries, and if these economic benefits, or if the countries would not be able to survive without these economic benefits, is that really something that we want for their sake? Similar to maybe the Bahamas, where tourism is the largest pillar on which their economy rests. Is that responsible for us to enable and encourage economically for them?
It's a good question. So for example, in Africa, with the economy, it's not fully built around trophy hunting. What I'm talking about more in this is the more smaller and local communities, which are very tied to trophy hunting in many cases. And yes, I do think that can be a problem, but then at the same time, that's one of the main sources of their income. And there's not really been another way for them to make the same amount of money in a different way. And at the same time, if you take away that trophy hunting economic incentive, then the money that would go towards conservation won't be there.
So hypothetically, if a lot of these animal rights groups just suddenly gained huge support and people were willing to donate huge amounts of money to support the economy in another way, if at that point they did not require trophy hunting in order to fund these conservation efforts, would you still make the same argument for trophy hunting, or at that point, would you no longer support it?
I would still support it because I do think that it plays a big role. But if that were to happen, then it wouldn't be playing as much of a vital role as it is right now. If people wanted to give millions of dollars to PETA, then I guess they could implement a different system. But I would still support trophy hunting because I enjoy hunting. And if that much money was going towards conservation, then there'd be lots of more animals to hunt and exist, I guess. So
Josh, you did a great job. I just have a specific question. In your thesis, you happen to mention that where trophy hunting has been banned, there has been significant population decline, is it not possible that that's less of a causational issue and more of a corollary issue, as we've seen in places like Madagascar, where there's been habitat loss and deforestation and pollution, and that is actually potentially caused by a different problem entirely, and that trophy hunting is simply corollary to that issue?
Yeah, so I would say that in the cases of like Botswana, where trophy hunting was banned, the result of loss in wildlife was primarily because of poaching and the resources that would help conserve animal species not being there. However, as I was talking about before, with cattle ranches being converted, those cattle ranches had destroyed wildlife habitats and converted them into cattle ranching. However, with trophy hunting, a lot of those cattle ranches are being converted back to preserve the habitats that were once there.
Okay, so my question is about the end of what you said about, you were talking about Genesis. So one of the things you said was that like in the verse that we're given, that like we are called to like fill the earth, like subdue it, and we are given dominion over the animals. But then you said several times also that these trophy hunters aren't bloodthirsty, but they do it for fun. So my question to you is, how do you like reconcile, like they do it for fun, it costs a lot of money, while it does provide economic like benefits, it does cost this much money, and they do it like for fun. And so I guess how do you justify that with our call, like our creation mandate to protect animals and to have dominion over them, but like also to like treat them as we should?
As I was saying before, that kind of goes into the question of hunting ethically with a clean kill and not making an animal suffer. But when I say hunters are having fun, it's not in the sense that they just want blood. It's more about they enjoy being on the hunt, which can even allow them to connect with God's creation, as I've seen, being out in the woods and seeing the wildlife there. And I would say that if you do it the right way, it doesn't really conflict with the biblical view of preserving and taking care of creation.
Sorry, I reached. The temptation was there. Thank you. I always appreciate when I hear topics that I've never thought a thing about and didn't know anything about. And so I feel like I at least have some idea on a new topic, and I appreciate that. This goes to, I think, some of the things that you've been asked. I'm just going to maybe rephrase something that's come up. But could you help me understand this? To what degree are you arguing that trophy hunting is itself a moral good? And to what degree are you arguing that trophy hunting is the choice of the lesser of two evils, for example, against poaching? Is it possible that it can be both in different ways? And if so, how? Could you help me understand how you're viewing that?
I would say it can be both, because I mean, in a sense, by trophy hunting, it could be taken as the lesser of two evils by some viewers, but then like me, you could view it as a mandate to taking care of God's creation, in which it would be a good thing. So I think it really depends on who you're talking to with that kind of, if it's good or the lesser of two evils, because I really think it can be both.
Hello, Josh. I'm wondering, what do you define as ethical hunting in terms of like, what are you against some forms of hunting? Are you against like hunting with a spear versus using a gun? Or are you even against arrows as well? Like, just where do you draw that line?
For me, it's not really about the weapon in a sense, because many locals hunt with spears in Africa. It's more about the way you conduct the hunt. So like I was saying before, with canned lion hunts, those are unfair to the animal and don't give the animal a fair chance, and is basically just cheating the system. So I think that it depends on where you're hunting and making sure that you don't have a guaranteed kill, that you actually have to track down the game and hunt for it and look for it and put in the work to take that animal. And then whenever you do take it, make its death as painless as possible.
Josh, I'm going to call time and say you're done.